Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Wahiva podcast. I know it's been a while, and I appreciate you bearing with me as I work through some perfectionism issues that have been a part of my experience for a very long time. So I feel like this is my chance to kind of shed some of those fears of mine and that competitive nature that I have and the judgment I have towards myself and the fear I have for basically belonging. So that's a lot to shed, and it's a lot of personal work I'm doing, which is a big reason as to why I'm doing this podcast, because I knew a lot of these things were going to come up. So cheers to making this sloppy first episode after my intro, which I hope you listened to. I want to talk about more of the structure of this podcast and how it came about, and basically what I'm going to be talking about the most, which is the gene keys. And if you've never heard of the gene keys, it's basically a living text, and it describes these 64 archetypes that we know in all of existence that kind of shapes us as beings, right? And what I love about these archetypes is there's three different he maps out three different points of frequency, right? There's the more dense, heavier frequency, which is the shadow. There's a lighter frequency, which is called the gift. And then there is a light frequency, which is called the city. And each genetic key has those three aspects to it. So whenever you were born, you were imprinted with a certain dharma, a certain path, a certain way that you were here to do, and you were here to be, I guess is what I mean to say. And I can feel myself nervous and performing. And I'm just going to pause and clear that for a moment. Okay, I'm back. So, when you were born, you were imprinted with a certain energy that gave you your dharmic path. It's kind of the reason why you're here. And I heard a really great analogy today, comparing it to like the human body. So you have all these different cells in your body, a muscle cell or a skin cell, or, whatever, all like a white blood cell, all these things. And they all have different tasks, and they all serve the whole, the body as a whole, right? But each of them are different in different ways, but they're all part of the one body. And they're all imprinted with certain genetic material that makes them the way they are and gets them to do the things that they do. And that's sort of what humans are. We're imprinted with this genetic coding, this blueprint, this way of being. And there are certain beautiful tools out there like astrology, human design, and gene keys are the ones that I'm kind of focused on the most, that helps you become aware of your own genetic imprint and what you're here to do. So the gene keys is like, he always has a different description for it, and I always try to remember it. But if I were to describe it myself, the gene keys is like a map. It'll show you things you've been struggling with your entire life. It'll show you ways in which you can overcome this more dense energy that isn't really your true nature and evolve in a way that we're all designed to evolve, right? So I think us as a collective, us as a human species, we are all evolving right now. So there's almost this pressure, this sort of drive to an evolution of consciousness. And so this kind of maps out like what that is. And what's really important though is that a lot of us are acting in the shadow state. And without awareness of the shadow state, we can never really evolve from it. So what happens is we get stuck into the shadow state of our gene keys of these 64 archetypes, and we stay in this loop and nothing ever changes from it. But as we are obviously wanting to evolve, this is sort of a guidebook into helping us see deeper inside of ourselves and move through the shadow state into the gift state and eventually into the city state. And whenever I studied the gene keys, I noticed that the more I read it and the more I contemplated it, what happened is I started to gently look at myself and things that have hurt me, like my own traumas, my own stories that I've told about myself, the things that kind of keep me clouded and held back from my full expression. The more I read them and contemplated, the more those gently started to fall away. And that's kind of what this whole podcast is about, truly, is authenticity. And the gene keys is just one tool towards that. And I think it's a really an all-encompassing tool and beautiful tool. So that's kind of why it's going to be my focus. But you'll notice if you ever read the gene keys or if you listen to some other sort of wisdom, you'll notice that they're all fairly similar. They're all kind of saying the same thing. What I am choosing to focus on is the gene keys, because I think that there is some very valuable information within here. And the way I understand it and the way that I feel it come through me, I feel like there's some valuable perceptions that I could give through my podcast. And to myself, like I noticed that as I'm saying this in front of this black camera in front of me, that I'm very much talking to myself. So this might not even be for anyone. It might just be for me, which I find fascinating. So something that is interesting is I get these downloads, this information of what to do and when to do it in the moment. And the first key that I was really inclined to read was the 55th key, which is interesting for two reasons. Number one, it's not on my own gene key profile. And when I talk about your gene key profile, you can go on genekeys.com, look up your profile, and you can see what keys impact you and are sort of your personal encoding and imprint. So this key particularly has nowhere on my profile. So I honestly thought that I would be starting off with my keys because that's something I've been deeply focusing and studying myself just for my own personal development. But where it pointed me is the 55th gene key. And another interesting part about it is one of the only keys that has the gift and the shadow are the same thing. So like I said, there's 3 different states and they all are labeled something different. Like the 64th gene key is confusion, imagination, and illumination, right? The 63rd gene key is doubt, inquiry, and truth. The 55th key, which is the one that we will be talking about today, is victimization, freedom, and freedom. So I found that really fascinating because it's the only key that has both the gift and the city the same. And it is one of the longest reads within the book. There are 2 long reads, and this one is one of the longest. So I was first a little troubled by having to read this long key because I personally struggle with focus and attention, which is something I'm actively working on. So to read 20 plus pages of really dense and I don't know, really dense, poetic, contemplative information was a bit of a challenge for me, but I'm grateful that it was the first one because it kind of shines a light on all the other keys. It almost seems like a foundation. And this key talks about victimization and it talks about freedom, but it also talks about our evolution as a species, how we started off more in an animal nature and kind of what we're growing to, because our natural way of life is evolution and evolving. And he had this download of this path of how we're evolving and what this very imminent new world is going to look like, you know? So what it's really going to encompass is our own freedom. And what does freedom mean? If I sit here and think, freedom means, it means absolute clarity. If I sit and think, if I were to be free, I would be a being imprinted as the way I am, and I would never feel restricted from what I feel is right, what I feel I want to do, what feels like my way. You know, if I think of it, if I was imprinted as a red blood cell, I would do the job of a red blood cell. And that verbiage is kind of yucky when I say do the job, because it isn't work. It is your being, it is your state, it is your joy, right? So as we fulfill our dharma and we move in our way, it is this joyous, free state. And it feels clear, it feels impactful on the planet, it feels purposeful, it feels like what we're actually looking for, you know? So although, like I said, he describes freedom very briefly and he describes victimization very briefly, he's mostly talking about the evolution of us as a species. And like I said, I have trouble with reading, and the way my brain works is whenever I read information, I don't retain everything. And I feel like what happens is I'll get into a flow state of information that I'm presenting, and whatever is meant to be presented will be presented. So I'm just trusting that as I'm, again, working on my own issue with perfectionism. So who knows what will come out of me. But the shadow state is something I kind of want to focus on because in my experience, it is a very common state of the world. And I feel like if you're on the spiritual path or not, it doesn't really matter. But people, particularly on the spiritual path, they tend to, when I say people, I'm mostly probably talking about myself. But if I'm talking about myself, then that means it's also present within others, right? So a lot of spiritual people or people that are sort of aware of this evolution within themselves and are wanting to create an environment that is helpful for this evolution, will see I will see the shadow states of these archetypes, such as victimization, as something to avoid, something that's not right within us, something that we don't want. And that early on in my journey, I realized that that was something that became a big problem for me. So what would happen is I would either feel judgment or I would feel jealousy or anger or sadness or confusion or doubt or victimization or whatever. And I would feel like, oh, I'm going to change my mind. I'm not jealous. This is great, right? Or I'm not judging that person. I think they're amazing, right? Like I would try to change my mind or I would try to change what was actually present. And what would happen is that particular shadow or that feeling or that more dense frequency would kind of stay stuck inside of me. And I feel like when anything is stagnant or when anything is stuck, it festers and it starts to wound us. Like you'll see the wounding within our bodies, within our minds, our hearts, our spirits, our emotions become more wounded. And it's just a state that it's interesting because it brings us into this deeper shadow only to evolve again. It's like we're brought into these denser, heavier, yuckier states because eventually we'll grow tired of it because it's not our natural state. Our natural state is light, is of higher frequency, is of love, peace, unity, freedom, right? And when you start to, for me, what I started to do was as I would feel these more dense emotions, and emotions are so great because they really show us where we are incredibly dense in our lives, where we are not in our truest nature. So when I start to feel these like heavier emotions such as sadness, grief, frustration, disappointment, bitterness, all the things. It allows me an opportunity to come into myself and see what story I'm telling myself. Because I think what happens is we avoid these denser frequencies again because it's not our truest nature. So that's just kind of, I can see why that would be a natural reaction, at least for myself. And then then it sits, it stagnates, it festers, and we're not changing, we're not moving. And it doesn't move through us. And so then we unconsciously stay stuck in these looped patterns of shadows. So the greatest gift that I've ever learned is like when I do feel these, again, these denser feelings, I can sort of, when I close my eyes, it's helpful because it kind of takes all the distractions away. And if I can close my eyes and actually feel what my body is feeling, because normally what's happening is my body's having a feeling and then my thoughts are running and they're saying, oh my god, you're terrible at this and that person is horrible and this and that, and there's all these issues in my brain, but really it's just generated from a feeling because it's like my nervous system feels that feeling and it's like danger, danger, and it creates all these reasons as to why I'm having these feelings. And then I start to have all these emotions on top of those thoughts, and then I start to create actions because of those thoughts and those emotions that all generated from a feeling inside my body, a reaction, right? So with these shadow states, I really sit with that, just the reaction that's in my body. I think this is a really important segue into even starting to talk about the gene keys because there's a shadow in every single key. And it seems to be similar how we deal with all those shadows. It is to simply observe and be aware and sit with and have like patience with, because if we do not, which is a real challenge to do, it's a really challenge not to be reactive and not to do something immediately. But if you can just pause for a moment and feel what's in your body and maybe just take a moment before the words come out of your mouth or the actions come out, I think it'll generate an awareness that'll help move the evolution that we all long for, right? So, yeah, I think talking about the shadow itself is so important because I think a lot of us exhibit primarily the shadow states. And I think something I learned also when learning the gene keys and contemplating about them is that there really is no hierarchy in these frequencies. There's no hierarchy, like it doesn't mean the city is better than the shadow. In fact, without the shadow, there would be no city. It's just a denser state, right? And as we're doing what we do, which is naturally evolve, that density starts to release, and what is revealed is just the fruit of that seed, the seed being the shadow, the fruit being the city. And that is just the nature of our process. That is the nature of being human, at least from what I believe. So I feel like victimization is something that we as a people experience a lot. And what it looks like, it's very subtle. It'll look like complaining, it'll look like blaming. Like if you think about your day and you think about things you've complained about. I'm trying to think of things that I complained about today. Oh yeah. I I got a new wool blanket today and it came pre-washed, which was awesome, but it gave me the washing instructions and it was like, hey, you can't use a top load washer, which is what I have because it'll ruin it. And it's funny because I have a top load washer and it ruins all my clothes. It's very frustrating. I had an instinct at the beginning to get a front load washer, but I got a top load washer. It's not what I want, you know? So I'm like complaining. I'm just like, "Ugh." Like I can't even wash this thing, you know? I feel like a victim to this damn top load washer, which is hilarious. Like if I sit back and think about it, you know, because the big problem is I'm letting an outside experience truly affect my inward experience. And something that someone reminded me today is the story, and I might butcher it, but it'll still make sense. It's like an old story of this man in China, I believe, and he basically says maybe to everything, right? So he has this horse and it runs away. And the people of his village are like, "Oh my gosh, that's such bad luck. I'm so sorry." And he's like, "Yeah, maybe." And then within the next few days, the horse comes back and it comes back with like 3 other horses, right? And the villagers were like, "Oh my gosh, that's such good luck. You've got more horses now. Amazing." And he's like, "Yeah, maybe." And then his son was out tending to these wild horses and training them or whatever, and one of them either bucked him off or stomped on him. I don't know, but he got injured and he broke his leg by training one of these wild horses. And the villagers were like, "Oh my gosh, God, that is such terrible luck. God, I'm so sorry." And he's like, "Yeah, maybe." And then I guess these people come in to recruit people for war, and they're looking for an eligible son or whatever. And because the boy's leg is not broken, he's not eligible to go into war. And the villagers are like, "Oh my God, you're so lucky. Like he wasn't drafted, you know?" And the old man's just like, maybe." So I think that that state that this man is, he stayed in peace no matter what was happening. And if you just think about our lives in general, it goes up and down, maybe. All these things happen. The thing is we put this meaning behind what happens. So the horse runs off and we mean like, to us, it means that we've lost abundance. It's like, oh, there goes my thing, as if anything could ever be yours, right? There goes my thing. Oh gosh. And it creates this, it changes us inside. It creates the Hindu word is these samskaras, this cloudiness within us that really dims our light. And what I mean by that, it creates density. It stops our authenticity. It clouds our judgment. It creates confusion. It rids us of clarity. Our breath gets thinner. All sorts of things. Our health declines, our physical health. So many things happen from this process of putting this meaning behind something that's just happening. If we were to, I had this vision, I use this a lot. I remember I have these visions a lot, and I had this pictorial vision. I was just standing. It was almost like a dream. I was standing and I was watching, I was like in the Sahara Desert, this big, massive, beautiful desert. And there was like this sandstorm happening, and the sand was moving left and it was moving right, and there was waves happening, and it would curl and it would do all this stuff. And I was just watching sand move. I didn't have any feelings like, "Oh no, don't move left," or "Oh no, don't move right," or like, "Hey, stay here," or "Gosh, those ripples." I just watched. There was no, and if you think about sand moving, there's none of us that would be like, "Oh no, don't do any of that." We would just let it happen. And if you can think of these particles of sand as these experience or people in our lives just moving around, shifting and changing, and we're the person standing, watching our life, watching the sand move, it would create this peace inside of us that would help us move authentically, right? But the thing is we start to label that sand. We start to say, "Well, that is bad. Don't move that way," or "This is not what I want. Don't move that way." When life is just happening, right? There's this subtle art to accepting life as it is while still committed to creating a fulfilling life. That's a paradox, right? I think every truth there lies a paradox. And if we're really watching where we're being victimized, where we feel like a victim, there's something that's happening, and either we want it or we don't want it. Either way, we're in resistance to life because there is a way that it is and we don't like it, you know? And having that resistance to life, like I said, is going to create that clouding, that judgment, that complaining, that victimization mindset that eventually will, that basically blocks us from our own natural state of freedom. So what I've learned in my experience is to just kind of be aware, like I said earlier, I really don't try to change my shadow state because I believe that the shadow state is a beautiful part of the journey towards freedom, right? If we're looking at the gene keys in that way as a way of evolution. And without victimization, that dense, heavy state, there wouldn't exist freedom. So it's kind of like looking at polarity, looking at duality. Without light, there wouldn't be dark. Without dark, there wouldn't be light, right? So having both opposite of the spectrums creates these two and whatever's in between, these beautiful different frequencies in these different states. So I think it's really important to honor victimization, and it's really important to notice when you feel victimized. And so that's been my practice lately, is to just realize when I'm blaming someone for my state. Like, I'm angry because this person did this, when in reality, I'm angry because I don't feel like my needs matter. And if I can just be aware of that, like, oh, this is why I feel like my needs don't matter. Is that true? Just because people act a certain way, that doesn't mean that my needs don't matter. For some reason, I've decided my needs don't matter. And so now I'm blaming this person because they're reinforcing my belief that my needs don't matter. And if I believe my needs don't matter, then I'm not able to express myself authentically. And then I'm suffering, So I think, like I said, awareness is the greatest key to our shadow states. On any of these shadow states, and victimization being in every single of these 64 archetypes, I think that having awareness says when we feel like a victim, that doesn't mean you have to change it. But if you can just sit with yourself as you feel victimization and maybe feel where it feels like in your body. Sometimes it's a tightening of the chest. Sometimes I'll feel like this fire just move through my arms. And I'm just watching it like I'm watching sand move, right? And as I watch it, it actually moves. It doesn't stay stagnant. It doesn't fester. It doesn't turn into deeper victimization. It doesn't turn into unconscious beliefs. It doesn't turn into actions that create a reality where I become this victim, because my mind is so powerful that if I believe I'm a victim, then these experiences happen to where I am a victim, right? And that's not the life we want to live. I'd rather, and I'm sure all of you would rather, live a life where you're free. And imagine if we were all in a world where all of us were free. Can you imagine what that would look like if we were like that man in the story, who was equanimous to his life circumstance and continued to do what he did? So I don't know that if there's more details to the story, but I picture in that story, this man is still chopping wood. He's still carrying water. Like, he's still doing these things as everything is happening to him. And his son ends up not going to war. A good time connecting with his son. I had I'm in a life experience right now where I share joint custody with my children, and there's parts of me that really want to spend more time with my children, and that's just not the way it is. And so I am trying to pull up more ideas of ways that I can spend more time with my children, but I ultimately think that whatever time I'm meant to have with my children will also come, and I will push for more time with my children and let the chips fall as they may, because that's me dedicated to my fulfilling life. Do you see what I'm saying? It's like I'm dedicated to I realize there's this desire. It's like, okay, I want to spend more time with my children. So I do these actions that would grant me more time with my children, but I'm not attached to an outcome, right? So I still do these things, and then I don't know what's going to happen, but maybe I get just the same amount of time with my children. I'm like, okay, like the chips have fallen that way, and that means, this time that I don't have with my children, it's opening itself up for whatever it is that I'm doing, whether it's this podcast or my business or my school that I'm going to. Like, there's all these things that I'm doing. But if it does grant me this more time with my children, then I'm meant to do that, right? So it's like, I don't know if you guys have heard of Bashar, but he's a I think he's an alien. And there's a man who transmits his information, and I listen to him all the time, and a lot of the things he says resonates. And one of the things he said is like the we've got the law of attraction all wrong. It's like we kind of have the basis of it, but what it really is that we are a particular frequency. We are an imprint. You know, my frequency presents itself as a woman, and her name is Jordan, and she has brown hair, and I am a 2-4 mental projector, right? This is my frequency, and I can't turn it off. Like, it's always on. It's always happening. And it's because I have this particular signal, this particular frequency, it's bringing things towards me, and it's whatever's meant for me is coming, it's coming, it's coming. And what's not is like really trying to get away. So if I can just, it's not about when we're manifesting, it's not about trying to bring something to us. It's more so about letting go of what isn't for us, right? So it's being in that equanimous state, like the story of the man in China, right? Kind of watching, like, if the horse leaves, oh, it was meant to leave. Okay, I feel that. And what you're doing when that horse leaves, you're making room for whatever comes. And in this case, 3 horses came, right? It's like, oh, okay. And those 3 horses wouldn't have come if that horse didn't leave, right? So whatever is meant to, whatever isn't in match with your frequency, which ultimately feels good for you, is trying to get away from you. And it's important that we learn to let it go. And whatever is coming to us is really trying to come to us. And if we don't let those other things go, we don't make space for the things that are coming to us. And so when we're in this victim state, we are very much holding on to something. And it's usually a belief, or it's something that's just not meant for us. That's why we feel so yucky about it. So anyways, I go off on a tangent, but I feel like if we can just recognize when we're in a victim state, when we feel a victim to life, no matter what it is, to first recognize it's okay to feel like a victim, to just honor that. Because I think if we're not gentle with ourselves, and we don't honor the fact that we're having these feelings, we start to suppress it, and that becomes a much bigger issue to deal with. So it's like, oh man, I really feel like a victim in this experience right now. And I actually happen to have a personal experience where I feel like a victim. And it's allowing me to contemplate the fact that I think that my needs don't matter, and to realize that my needs do matter. And just because some people may present, in my perspective, to be people that don't think my needs matter, those are the people that are trying to get away from me. You know, as long as I believe my needs matter, then I can continue to fulfill my needs. And then the world continues to fulfill my needs for me as well. Because like I was saying earlier, your frequency, if it truly is a need, if it is something for your dharmic path, it will be coming to you. Something that Richard Rudd actually said in his book, The Art of Contemplation, which is a beautiful read. It's short. I recommend it to everyone. But sometimes he wrote in his book that it really hit me. It says, some dreams are not the right dreams, or something along those lines. Like, some of your desires are not, they're just simply not meant for you. It's like, oh, but then why do we have those desires, right? Those desires are usually coming from a place to fulfill these parts of ourselves that just aren't true. Yeah, these shadow states basically reveal these deeper beliefs that we've probably been holding on to for a long time. So the feeling of victimization is really just an opportunity for us to be free. It's an opportunity for us to pause and be gentle with ourselves and be compassionate with ourselves, as we've been holding on to generations of trauma, of shadows, of pain, of victim states, essentially. And it's coming in us today for us to let go of those more dense frequencies that aren't meant for us to let the light come in. And I think once our light comes in and we truly shine as ourselves, then the world will be a more unified place, a cleaner place, and a place where we will experience joy beyond our very imagination, you know? So I think it's something that we all want, that if you're listening to this, it's been in the back of your mind of, you know, what you can do in your daily life to evolve and grow and change. And this podcast is a very good example for me of a just a daily thing in my life that I could use to help myself evolve. Like, I do feel fear standing in front of this camera. I do feel like I don't have enough information to share or to create value to the people around me. And I'm really trying to just do this for myself, but I also want this to be for others. And I have compassion for myself as I'm talking to this camera, and I can feel myself thinking thoughts like, "Hey, like this would be better if someone asked you questions," you know? And that's just me again feeling a victim to my circumstance because no one's asking me questions right now. Right now, I'm just doing what feels right. I've really been pulled to create this podcast. I've really been pulled and told by this wisdom inside of me to do this, and it might just be for my own learning. And I really feel like it is for my greatest good. And as I'm sitting here just talking this microphone, it's obvious because I can already feel these feelings of I'm not enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not valuable enough. I don't have anything to share with the world, right? And those are hard things to chew on because they really limit me from my truest expression, which is so unfortunate. And the gifts that have been imprinted on me to give to the world is completely blocked by those beliefs that I hold on to keep myself safe, as if I'm surviving from something, you know? So this is this is very real for me as I sit in front of this, where potentially hundreds of people will listen to me talk, hundreds, thousands, I don't know, will listen to me talk about my most vulnerable parts. And I just want to express gratitude for you being here, for you listening to me, because you're witnessing right in front of your very eyes my own true evolution, me being very real with you. And maybe you seeing within yourself where you've also felt this way, and maybe it gives you an opportunity to be very real with yourself. So yeah, I have a lot of gratitude for any of my listeners. I have a lot of gratitude just for myself for showing up here and being real about how I'm feeling. And that awareness of how I'm feeling is ultimately what will help me grow and shine and share my gifts with all of you, which will ultimately help you guys all grow and shine and share all your gifts with all of us. And that is my truest desire with all this that I'm doing. So, yeah, thank you guys so much for being here. And oh, I am already seeing the fruit of this podcast for myself. So, yeah, tune in for next time. This is kind of going to be the structure of when I talk about the gene keys. It's not going to be me reading out of the book, it's going to be me reading it myself and contemplating and sharing with you all what comes up for me because of it. Because I think since I am a part of the collective that you're also a part of, we all have similar things that we're struggling with, similar things that we're suffering from, and similar things that we're wanting to let go of and evolve from. So we're all here together. And again, appreciate you so much for witnessing me, for recognizing me, and for accepting me as I am. Thank you. Peace.